It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccerphiles Canada. Welcome to Series 32, looking at the players of the 2026 FIFA World Cup. This episode is looking at the players of Morocco. Part 1, the candidates. Here we go. Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccerphiles Canada. I'm Kevin and this is Series 32 on the players of the 2026 World Cup. This episode covers Morocco's players. We have done media casts for the players of most of the teams, and most of them within the last couple of years. In fact, we did the African Cup teams just a couple of months ago. If you're interested in looking into a team before we put out the media cast for this tournament, you can check out our back catalogue using the addresses on the screen or in the show notes. All right, on we go with the show, and we're doing this media cast in two parts. On the players, part 1 here is a look at the candidates for the squad and their likelihood of making it. We examine the participation of players in games over the recent period, as well as a couple of other factors, and categorize them into definite, likely, possible but unlikely, and seemingly off the squad. And we are going to introduce the players, going into more detail on those we think likely to reach the final squad, and less, perhaps even just the names of players unlikely to get there. Part 2 will come out when the squad lists are released and the final squad selected in late May or early June. That will be. At that time, we'll go back over the list that we create here and see who made it and who didn't. And we'll also cover things like predicting starters, updating injuries, some key injuries for Morocco here, and other things like surprise selections. So this episode has 3 sections. In section 1, we're going to look at some general team information. Section 2 is the main part of the media cast. That's where we're going to look at the candidates position by position, introduce them, and talk about their likelihood of selection. And then in section 3, we have some concluding matters. We're also going to use that as a short version. So we'll quickly review section 2. At the beginning of that. And concluding matters will include some key information on injuries. All right, let's move into section 1 then. We're going to look at Morocco's recent games. Well, as I said, we did a media cast for Morocco in the build-up to the African Cup. That was in December of 2025, so not much has happened since then. We are going to take a look at the friendlies in March and tell you who played in them. But really, we are not going to kind of cover the participation of players up to the African Cup, but we will kind of tell you what role they played in that. And then in the March friendlies, just let me pull myself together a little bit here. So we have the 2025 African Cup, December and January, December 2025 and January 2026, that is. Just let me correct that on the graphic. And that is 7 games. They reached the final there. A bit of a controversy in whether they won the cup or not. We're not going to get into that here. Next, though, we do have 2 friendlies in March of 2026, and really that's all we have to look at since the African Cup. But there is some interesting stuff coming out of there. Probably the biggest one being that the manager has been replaced. So we have the manager. He wasn't fired. He resigned. And the new manager coming in for the March games there. Okay, so let's take a look at their formations. A bit unsettled because over the 7 games that we're talking about, I guess we're just looking at the World Cup games there. They used 4 different formations over the 7 games. So actually, I think I'm going to kind of skip that part because the formation they used the most, the 4-1-4-1 formation, was only used in 3 of the 7 games. It's not very instructive, I would say, but we will kind of summarize here. Despite using various formations, they used a 2-man central defense 100% of the time there, so always went with the 4-man, never going with a 3-man central defense. 4-man meaning the 2 central defenders on the right back and the left back. Similarly, up front, it's 100% always a single forward. So they never used a 2-man forward line either. So, yes, not much to look at there. Let's move on to the upcoming games. Well, for most teams, we were saving the March games to look at in part 2 here. So I didn't actually write down the results, although those games have been played. On March 27th, they played Paraguay in Spain. And on March 31st, they played Ecuador in France. So kind of interesting there. 2 South American teams, but playing them both in Europe. They only have one scheduled pre-tournament game so far. We expect more, but right now they're scheduled to play Norway in the USA on June 7th. But perhaps in part 2 there will be more games scheduled there. We're not really interested in the scores as far as this player podcast goes. We're really interested in the lineups. And so we will take a closer look at those lineups in part 2. But when we go through the player profiles, we'll tell you the role that each player played in those March games and in the African Cup there. Okay, let's go and begin section 2. So the big news here is that the manager that took them through the African Cup there resigned. Hang on, I'm in the wrong spot in my graphics. That's why I'm confused. Now I got it. So Walid Regragui resigned after the Cup. He actually was disappointed with the result. They did lose in the final, but then the game was later awarded to them. So kind of unclear who the winner of the African Cup was. But he was disappointed. They were hosting the Cup and resigned after the Cup. And he also said he was kind of tired and felt that they needed kind of a fresh start. So the manager coming in is actually part of the system there. He was manager of underage teams there, and he will take over Mohamed Ouabi, who is of Moroccan background. Regraoui was too, as a matter of fact. But let's take a closer look at him. Not really that experienced. Was manager of the Morocco under-23 national team, apparently still is, since 2025, and part of the or manager of the under-20 national team from 2022 to 2025. Otherwise, he's really just been a manager of youth teams for Anderlecht in Belgium, as well as an assistant manager for Anderlecht. So really not that experienced there. And I gotta say, I would not be surprised if Regragui was brought back in for the Cup in the couple of months here before it happens. If that happens, we'll let you know in part 2, or I may be completely wrong about that. But I gotta say, it's a fairly experienced manager they're going in with. So we're going to consider Ouabi a likely candidate at this point, but would not be shocked if that was changed before the Cup comes around. Let's go to goalkeepers and see what we have. So we have a definite candidate in Yassine Bounou, sometimes called just Bono. And then we have a definite candidate also in Munir Mohand, who is sometimes called just Munir or just Mohand or Munir Mohammadi. I've seen him listed by all of those games. He's an injury question, though. We'll come back to that. But our rating here does not take into account the injury. So we consider, or you'll see, we consider him definite. Um, but even if they're out of the cup for an injury, we'll still list them as definite candidates and then comment on the injury. We have no goalkeepers at the likely level, and so we move down to the possible level where we have two. El Mehdi Al Harar is the first of those, and then we have Mehdi Ben Abid as a possible candidate. Two possible but unlikely candidates. Salahuddin Chibab. Sorry, that's Salahuddin Chihab, and then Yusuf Al Moti. And finally, seemingly off the squad, Rashid Ghanimi. All right, well, we'll take a look at the candidates here, spending a bit more time on the more possible ones here. Let's go back to Yassine Bounou, who has been with Morocco since 2013 with 80 caps, and he's 34 years old now. And he's currently with Al Hilal in Saudi Arabia, has been since 2023, but was with Spanish teams, quite a few of them before that. Sevilla there, Girona, and Atletico Madrid's B team there. The team he came up through in Morocco was Wydad Casablanca there, but he was actually born in Canada, so we have a bit of an affinity for him here in Canada. Yassine Bounou has been part of tournaments since the 2017 African Cup. I'm not going to go through them all because they play the African Cup every 2 years. I'll just say anything noteworthy. Perhaps more noteworthy is that he was part of the 2018 World Cup as a substitute on the bench there, but the starting goalkeeper in the 2022 edition, and has started the last couple of African Cups, the last few, including in 2025, where he won the Golden Gloves Award. There, he made several outstanding saves. And so here's how we're going to handle recent participation. We'll tell you how likely a candidate they were coming into the African Cup, whether they made the tournament or not, and then we'll tell you if they played in the March game. So for Yassine Bounou, he was a definite candidate coming into the Cup and a starter there. He also started both of them March 2026 games. So he remains a definite candidate. Next, we have Munir Mohand, or Munir Mohammadi. He's been with Morocco since 2015 with 50 caps and no goals, and he's 37 years old. So really getting up there in age, actually. Renaissance Berkane in Morocco is his club. He's been with them since 2024. He has played in Turkey and several clubs in Spain. Mohammadi was actually the starter in his first tournament in the African Cup 2017 and was the starter in 2018. After that, Bono took over, and he and Mohand was a backup keeper, but he was backup keeper in all of the tournaments from 2017 onwards. So that's, let me see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 tournaments there. He had been a definite candidate coming into the 2025 African Cup, even if we knew he was a backup keeper, and he was selected for the final squad. However, he was injured for the March 2026 games, and has been out with a shoulder injury from mid-February 2026. However, he is expected back in May of 2026, and we think he will be selected for the squad. We have him as a definite candidate. Next, we go down to the possible level for El Mehdi Al Harar, and he's new to Morocco, fairly new, since 2025, with 7 caps though, and he is 25 years old. Al Harar plays for Raja Casablanca in Morocco since 2024, and his whole career has been in Morocco. He was selected for the 2025 African Cup there, so the third string keeper along the way. We had considered him a possible candidate, Al Harar, going into the 2025 African Cup, and he was selected for the squad. He appeared on the bench for the first of the March 2026 games, but was not selected for the second. So we still consider him a possible candidate. We think there are other candidates who may challenge for the position he had in the 2025 African Cup. Which was basically third string keeper. One of those would be Mehdi Benabid. He's with Morocco since 2025. Also, he has no caps for the team and is 27 years old, plays for Wydad Casablanca in Morocco since 2025. His whole career has been in Morocco. And Benabid also has been involved in an African Cup. He was the third string keeper for the 2023 African Cup. But like Al Harar saw no field time in the tournament. Not selected though for the 2025 African Cup, so Al Harar overtook him there. We had considered him a possible candidate coming into the 2025 African Cup, and he did make the preliminary squad there. Ultimately, though, he was selected for the FIFA Arab Cup, perhaps instead of this cup. And he was not the starting keeper there, but he did take over the starting keeping position in game 2 onwards there. And he was also on the bench for both of the March 2026 games, well, probably replacing the injured Mohand there. So really the third string keeper up in the air between those two. And not out of the picture are our possible but unlikely candidates, Salaheddine Chihab. We won't go into much detail on him there, but he was the starting keeper in the 2025 Arab Cup, Chihab. Not that there's a lot of, how can I say, relevance to that, because the most of the players on that squad were really not players that play for the senior team in the African Cup there. So not a strong connection between those tournaments. Chihab, though, was not selected for the March 2026 games, so we think he's unlikely. So too Youssef Al Moti. He was selected for the preliminary squad for the African Cup, but not selected for the March 2026 game. So has been in and around there. He was also on the preliminary squad for the 2023 African Cup as well. And finally, we have Rashid Ghanimi. And he was a backup keeper in the Arab Cup there in December of 2025, not selected for March 2026, and seems to be off the squad. Actually, he wasn't selected for the preliminary squad for the 2025 African Cup either. All right, so those are our candidates. So we'll see if Munir Mohand recovers from his injury, and we'll report on that in part 2. Meanwhile, we move on up to central defense, where we really have a mess up here, which I'll talk about after doing the players here. Let's introduce, though, the candidates that we have. We have at the definite level Nayef Aguerd, and then at the likely level, Issa Diop. He's a newcomer during this period. That's why his name is in orange. If it's in black, like Aguerd and the first possible player, Jawad Al-Yamik, that means they've been through a tournament. That's what the black text indicates. We have a whole bunch of possible candidates here. The second one is Adam Messina, and then we have Abdel Abkar, and then El Hamid Eight Boudlal. But wait, we're not finished yet. We have 3 more to go. Chadi Riyad, Radouane Halal, I'm guessing, and finally Ismail Baouf. 7 possible candidates there, and there's a reason for that. At the possible but unlikely level is Yunus Abdel Hamid, and then 3 players seemingly off the squad. Romain Saiss, who's actually retired. We'll move him down to the retired category there. Um, and Ashraf Dari, also seemingly off the squad. And finally, Jamal Harkas. So a lot of players to go through there. We are kind of probably looking for 5 or 6 players to cover 2 positions, since they usually play that 2-man central defence. Let's go back and look. We'll introduce the main candidates at least. Nayef Aguerd, been with Morocco since 2016 with 64 caps and 2 goals, and he is 29 years old. And with Marseille in France since 2025. He was with West Ham in England for 3 years before that. And he's been part of tournaments since the 2021 African Cup. I'll just cover the recent ones, though. He was a starter in the 2025 African Cup there. And he had been a likely candidate coming into that cup, and he was selected for the final squad and started. However, Nayef Aguerd was injured for the March 2026 games, and he is out with a groin injury and an unknown return date there. So Nayef Aguerd doubtful, and that's probably why they're scrambling for central defenders here. I'll just drop down to the bottom and talk about Romain Saiss, because he was a starter in the cup as well. In the recent African Cup, but he has announced his retirement from international football. He did that in February 2026 after the Cup there. He did struggle with injury in several recent tournaments. Well, the 2022 2022 World Cup and the 2025 African Cup. Okay, just those 2 tournaments. But in both cases, he got injured in game 1. No, let me see. It was later into the World Cup. In the 2025 African Cup, just 19 minutes in, he got injured. That ended his tournament, and he retired, announced his retirement afterwards. Actually, there was speculation he was retiring even before that cup, because he's 36 years old now. So with Romain Saiss and Aguerd gone, they're scrambling to find new defenders. It was Messina and El Yamik kind of covering the position of Romain Saiss in the cup there. We'll come to that. But let's go to our likely candidate, Issa Diop, new to the team since 2026. He is 29 years old and plays for Fulham in England since 2022, was with West Ham in England for 4 years before that. He's a French-born player, as many of the Moroccan players are. And Issa Diop got his first cap in March of 2026. He started both of those games, and so that's why we have him as a likely candidate here. Covering the position in the last African Cup was Jawad El Yamik. He's been with Morocco since 2016 with 41 caps and 4 goals. He's 34 years old now. Recently moved to Zaragoza in Spain since 2026. He played for a couple of clubs in Saudi Arabia before that, and then prior to that in Spain and Italy. Despite joining the team in 2016, El Yamik was not called up for a tournament until the 2022 World Cup, and he also missed the 2023 African Cup, but was selected for the 2025 African Cup. In both cases, he began as a substitute, but ended up starting some games there. As I say, covering Romain Saiss's absence in game 2 there. Nevertheless, El Yamik had been a likely candidate coming into that cup, and he was selected for the final squad. However, he was not selected for the March 2026 games, so that leaves us in a bit of doubt as to whether he's being favoured. Remember, it is a new manager making the selections in March 2026. So Jawad El Yamik, a possible candidate. Next, we have Adam Messina, and he has been with Morocco since 2021 with 28 caps. He's 31 years old. and he was with Torino in Italy until 2026. He is now unattached. That's not the only problem. But I'll finish his bio. He was with Udinese in Italy and Watford in England. That's actually part of the same kind of group. They are, I think, have the same owners, or they're kind of a group of teams there. Messina was a starter in the 2021 African Cup, but missed several tournaments, injured for the 2022 World Cup, not selected in 2023. So his second tournament was the 2025 African Cup, and he ultimately became the replacement for Romain Saiss in central defence there. He had been a likely candidate coming into the African Cup there in 2025, and he was selected. However, he was injured, Adam Messina, for the March 2026 games. He is out with a bruised hip from late January 2026 and an unknown return date. And I gotta say, combined with that, combined with being unattached to a club team, I would say Adam Messina's chances are quite slim here. So then we are probably looking at some of the candidates below. We have Abdel Abkar. He's our third of the possible candidates, with Morocco since 2024. 3 caps for him. He's 27 years old and plays for Getafe in Spain since 2025. He has been with several Spanish teams, and he was selected for the 2023 African Cup, just on the bench there, but injury prevented his selection from the 2025 African Cup. So he's coming back from injury. I'll mention that after saying that he was a possible candidate coming into the 2025 African Cup, but instead played in the FIFA Arab Cup there, and he also did not appear in the March 2026 games. So he did quickly recover from the injury sorry. I think I've been mistaken there. He was out of the 2025 African Cup with a muscle injury that he had picked up in the FIFA Arab Cup there. Anyway, he did quickly recover from that. And it doesn't look like that injury was the reason he wasn't selected for the March 2026 game. So all in all, Abdel Abkar, one of several possible candidates here. Next, we have Abdelhamid Boudlal, new to the team since 2025, just 1 cap for the 20-year-old. He plays for Reims in France, I think kind of between the A and B team there. He was selected for the African Cup there in 2025. He had been a new addition just on the preliminary squad coming into that tournament, and was selected for the final squad. However, he too did not appear in the 2026 March games there. Next, Chadi Riyad, with Morocco since 2024, with 4 caps and 1 goal, and he's 23 years old, plays for Crystal Palace in England since 2024, but was with Barcelona in Spain for a couple of years before that, and Barcelona's B team and youth club as well. Chadi Riyad. He was selected for the 2023 African Cup, just on the bench there, but not selected for the 2025 edition, on the preliminary squad, but not making the final cut there. However, he was called up for both games, returning after a 2-year absence, almost a 2-year absence, to be selected for the March 2026 games. He started one of those and was on the bench for the other. So Chadi Riyad, perhaps going to be the replacement there. Next, we have 2 new candidates. The first one, Redouane Halal, and brand new to the team since 2026. Called up for the March games. He's 23 years old, and he started one of them and was on the bench for one of them. He started the second of the two games there. Redouane Halal plays for KV Mechelen in Belgium since 2024 and was with Atletico Madrid's B team before that. He's French born. So Redouane Halal, a possible candidate. And finally, on the possible list, we have Ismail Baouf. He doesn't have any caps for Morocco. He's 21 years old and plays for Camber, not a big team in the Netherlands there. He was born in Belgium, Ismail Baouf, and got his first appearance in March 2026. Didn't start either of those games there. All right. So, yes, the reason for that many candidates is because of Aguerd's injury and Romain Saïss's retirement. So, really just completely rebuilding that central defence. We do have a couple of players, or one player at the possible but unlikely level, Yunus Abdelhamid. We won't go into detail, but he was part of the 2019 and 2023 African Cups there and did appear on the preliminary squad for the 2025 African Cup, but was not called up for the March games, so we think he is unlikely. We have Ashraf Dari. He basically replaced Romain Saïss in the 2022 World Cup there, and he has been loaned out to a team in Sweden in 2026, but he's on the roster of Al Ahly in Egypt. Again, I'm just looking to see if he was selected for the 2025 African Cup. It seems he was not on the preliminary squad, but had been struggling with injury prior to that, and so that may have been the reason he wasn't called to the preliminary squad. But as I said, Ashraf Dari was part of the 2022 World Cup squad. That's his only tournament for Morocco, and did replace Romain Saïss when he got injured towards the end there. Finally, we have Jamal Harkas. He's never been part of any tournament. 4 caps since 2021 and even a goal, but he is 31 years old and was an unlikely, possible but unlikely candidate coming into the African Cup, and then was not selected for the preliminary squad there. So we now have him as seemingly off the squad. So that's an awful lot of players we've dealt with in central defence. Again, they're really dealing with the problem there. And let's move on to the outside positions, which are not so much of a problem. We begin populating the list with Noussair Mazraoui as a left back. In fact, he's coded as a right back, but has been playing on the left for Morocco because they have Hakimi on the right side there. Also, we have Anas Salah Eddin, and he's at the likely level. And then 2 candidates at the possible level, Youssef Belhamari and Soufiane El Karouani there. And seemingly, possible but unlikely, 2 candidates here too, Yahya Atiyat Allah and Adam Asnou there. So quite a few candidates, because this is just one position. But as I said, Noussair Mazraoui, our definite candidate, coded as a right back, and I think he plays as a right back for Manchester United, his club in England since 2024. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'll tell you, Mazraoui has been with Morocco since 2018 with 42 caps and 2 goals. He's 28 years old. Prior to Manchester United, he was with Bayern Munich in Germany for 2 years and Ajax in Netherlands for 4 years, actually with Ajax's youth club for 10 years. Mazraoui was born in the Netherlands there. His first tournament was the 2019 African Cup, having just missed out on the World Cup in 2018. He was selected for a 26-man preliminary squad, so was one of the 3 players cut. part of the 2019 African Cup as a sub, but in 2021, a falling out with the manager led to his non-selection. However, since the World Cup in 2022, he's been consistently called up for tournaments and was a starter in the 2025 African Cup there, actually replacing Hakimi on the right in the first two games, and then moving over to the left. Mazraoui was named to the team of the tournament there. And going into that tournament, we had considered him a possible candidate. There were a couple of considerations that made us not put him as a definite candidate, but he was selected for the final squad, and he appeared in both of the March 2026 games, but only as a substitute in one and on the bench for the other. So perhaps they were experimenting on the left side a little bit there. Anyway, Nusa Mazraoui we consider a definite candidate for selection. Next, we have likely candidate Anas Salah Eddine, and he has been with Morocco since 2025 with 8 caps and no goals, and is 24 years old. He plays for Roma in Italy, Salah Eddine, since 2025, but actually has been loaned out to PSV Eindhoven in the Netherlands since 2025, and all of his clubs have been in the Netherlands. Like Mazraoui, he was born there, and so came through their soccer system. Like Mazraoui, through Ajax, actually. Well, that was the last of his youth clubs. Anas Salah Eddine started actually on the right side on the left side in the African Cup. So it was Mazraoui on the right and Salah Eddine on the left. But when Hakimi came back, Mazraoui took over the position there. Salah Eddine came in as a substitute for 2 games. Coming into the 2025 African Cup, he had been a new addition on the preliminary squad and was selected for the final squad there. He appeared in both of the March 2026 games, starting one and as a substitute in the other. So we have Anas Salah Eddine coming in to this tournament as a likely candidate. Next, we have the first of our 2 possible candidates, Youssouf Belhamari, and he is with Morocco since 2024, has 15 caps already, and is 27 years old. He has recently moved to Al Ahly in Egypt since 2026, having been with Raja Casablanca for 3 years before that. All of his clubs have been in Morocco, actually came up through the FUS Rabat system there. And his first tournament, Belhamari, was in the 2025 African Cup. Didn't see any action though, just on the bench there, not even on the bench for game 1, in fact. And Belhamari had been a likely candidate coming into the Cup and was selected, but as we saw, just as a substitute. And he did not appear in the March 2026 game. So all of that leads us to seeing him as a possible candidate here. Also possible is Soufiane El Karouani, with Morocco since 2021, with 6 caps and no goals. He's 26 years old, and also born in the Netherlands, with all of his clubs in the Netherlands, currently with Utrecht in the Netherlands since 2023, and Nijmegen for 4 years before that. That was his youth club. El Karouani was selected for the 2021 African Cup, but not for any of the 3 tournaments since then. Was actually off the team for a 3-year period in there. So going into the 2025 African Cup, we had considered him a possible candidate. However, he was not even selected for the preliminary squad. So it is a bit of a surprise that he was selected for the March 2026 games, where he was a substitute in one and on the bench in the other, Soufiane El Karouani. So as I said, kind of experimenting with the left back position rather than giving it to Mazraoui as they had in the Cup. Next, we have Yahya Atia Allah, with Morocco since 2022 with 22 caps and no goals. He's 31 years old now and is with Sochi in Russia since 2024. Was loaned out to Al Ahly in Egypt, where several Morocco players have winded up. Atiat Allah was selected for the World Cup in 2022 and the following African Cup, but not for the 2025 African Cup, just on the preliminary roster there. And he last appeared for the team back in November 2024, but because he was named to the preliminary squad, we think he's still in the picture, and we have Atiat Allah as a possible but unlikely candidate. Also possible unlikely is Spanish-born Adam Asnou. 3 caps for Morocco since 2024. He's just 20 years old, and he plays for Everton in England, or is at least on their roster. I don't see him playing much. Been with them since 2025 and with Bayern Munich in Germany for a year before that. So pretty good club affiliations. He did make the preliminary roster for the 2025 African Cup, and that is why we have him on the list here. But he didn't appear in the March 2026 game. So Adam Asnou, a possible but unlikely candidate. That's it for the left back position. The right back position is probably a bit more stable. It's Achraf Hakimi over here. Sorry, I got to move up the graphics. Right backs, as a definite candidate, Achraf Hakimi. And then we have none at the likely level. Of course, we've moved Mazraoui over to the left. So at the possible level, we have 2 candidates, Omar El Hilali and then Zakaria El Ouadi. And then 1 candidate at the possible but unlikely level, Ayoud El Amloud. So let's look at Achraf Hakimi, one of their biggest players and captain of the team, I do believe. I don't have it written down here, but I'm quite sure he's the captain. Been with Morocco since 2016 with 95 caps and 11 goals now. He's still just 27 years old, though. Hakimi plays for Paris Saint-Germain in France since 2021, was with Inter Milan and Real Madrid before that, and loaned out to Borussia Dortmund. So some of the top clubs in Europe there. He was with Real Madrid's youth club, actually, from for 10 years. And Hakimi was born in Spain. His first tournament was the World Cup in 2018. He was a starter immediately and has been a starter in all cups since. That is, I should just clarify this, that is 4 African Cups and 2 World Cups there. However, in the recent African Cup, he was injured coming into the tournament, so out for the first 2 games. He subbed in for game 3 and then was a starter after that. And he also was named to the team of the tournament, a bit questionably so, though. I think that's more reputation than performance there. Not that his performance was bad, it just wasn't outstanding. Hakimi had been a definite candidate coming into that cup, and we thought they would select him even if he was injured, because he was expected to recover during the cup, and he did. And Hakimi started both of the March 2026 games, so he's a definite candidate. The first of 2 possible candidates, Omar El Hilal, new to the team since 2025. He was on our radar going into the he was on our radar actually from 2023. I'll come back to that. Al Hilali only has 1 cap for the national team, though, and he's 23 years old. Plays for Espanyol in Spain since 2021 and was born in Spain. He was on our radar because he was named to the preliminary squad for the 2023 African Cup, but didn't make the cut there. Not even named, though, to the preliminary squad, 55-man preliminary squad for the 2025 African Cup. even though he had been a possible candidate coming in. He last appeared on the bench in October of 2025. But as I said, not selected for that or for the March game. So Omar El Hilali, just a possible candidate here. Also possible is Zakaria El Awadi. Let me try that again. Zakaria El Ouadi. And he's been with Morocco since 2025. 2 caps for him at 25 years old, and plays for Genk in Belgium since 2023. El Ouadi was born in Belgium, actually. He was not selected for the African Cup in 2025. He had been struggling with injury in the lead up to that. We don't know if that was the reason or not, because he had been an unlikely candidate coming into that cup. And he was not selected for the 55-man preliminary squad. That might have been due to the injury, though. El Ouadi did come back after that absence and appeared in both of the March 2026 games as a substitute in one and on the bench for one there. So we should probably move him above El Hilali, and I think I will do that here. But we'll move on to our possible but unlikely candidate. That's Ayoub El Amloud. He is, well, I won't go into too much detail. He's never been selected for a tournament, even though he's been around since 2021. He only has 1 cap for the national team. We have him as possible but unlikely because he was named to the preliminary squad for the 2025 African Cup, even though he had seemed to be off the squad going into that cup. So not as off the squad as we thought. And we have Ayoub El Amloud as possible but unlikely here. All right, that is defense. We move to the midfield now, and we're going to begin with the defensive and central midfield. And let's take a look. We'll do them separately, even though there's not a lot of separation between them on the field. In other words, it's often one line of defense, one line of midfield. So it could be either defensive or central midfielders in there. In fact, for Morocco, it's kind of hard to tell even between central and attacking midfielders, because they kind of move around in a bunch in the middle there. However, we will go through them in terms of their coded positions here, just so we're not dealing with too many names at the same time. We have no candidates listed as defensive midfielders at the definite level, so we go down to the likely level where we have Oussama Targaline. And then you may be surprised to find we have Sofiane Amrabat as the first of our possible candidates. We have 3 in all. The other 2 are new. Mohamed Rabi Hurmat is the first, and Samir Al Murabet is the second. And then we have 2 candidates at the possible but unlikely level. And the first is Oussama El Azouzi, and then Amir Richardson. So let's take a look at these candidates. Actually, the main candidates are at the central midfield, which we'll deal with next. But we will take a look at likely candidate Oussama Targaline here. He's been with Morocco since 2024 with 11 caps, and he is 24 years old and plays for Feyenoord in the Netherlands. He was born in Morocco, though, with Feyenoord since 2025, and was selected for the African Cup. He subbed into several games in the final stages there. Targaline had been a likely candidate coming into that cup and was selected. He was also on the bench for both March 2026 games. So we have Oussama Targaline as a likely candidate to make the World Cup squad here. Let's look at Sofiane Amrabat. Since 2017 with the national team, 73 caps there, and 29 years old. He plays for Fenerbahce in Turkey, or at least is on their roster still. He's on loan to Real Betis in Spain since 2025. And he has several good clubs in his resume. Fiorentina in Italy for 5 years, where he was loaned out to Manchester United. And he also played for Club Brugge in Belgium and Hellas Verona in Italy. Yes, he was born in the Netherlands, came up through the Utrecht system there, and was first selected in terms of tournaments for the 2018 World Cup there. He was only a substitute in that cup and not selected for the 2019 African Cup, but has been selected for all tournaments since. A starter in the 2022 World Cup, and started in the 2025 African Cup recently, started games 1 and 2, but lost his starting position and appeared only as a substitute in game 5 after that. He had been a likely candidate coming into that tournament and was selected for the final squad. But given that he lost his starting position and barely got on the field after that, and that he was not selected for the March 2026 games, we move him down to the possible level. Now, people who know Morocco inside and out, and I'm always a bit fearful of this, maybe saying, oh, that's ridiculous, he'll definitely be called up. I know some teams inside and out, and I know Morocco quite well, but in cases like this, I'm never dead sure if we're making the right rating. Sofiane Amrabat is a big name for Morocco, so they might want to have him there, even if only for his experience. But there we have it. We have him at the possible level, perhaps a little bit higher given his reputation. Also at the possible level, the first of our two newcomers, Mohamed Rabi Hramat, and been with Morocco since 2025, but has 15 caps, am I right? Yes, I am, 15 caps and 2 goals. However, they were earned in lesser competitions, the African National Championship in August 2025 and the FIFA Arab Cup in December 2025. That makes it a bit difficult because we get players with, say, 15 caps in a year and think, oh my goodness, they've stormed onto the field here, but actually not. He got his first cap in March 2026, so he did make the transition from those, we'll call them B teams. Really, the Arab Cup team is probably a B team, and the African National Championship a C team, if you want to think of it that way. But and it's not easy to make the transition, but he did so. In fact, started one of the 2 games there in March of 2026 and was subbed in for the other. So Mohamed Rabi Hramat, a possible candidate here, and actually looking fairly good. Next, we have Samir El Mourabat, also at the possible level, brand new to the team in 2026, got 2 caps, and he is 21 years old, playing for Strasbourg in France since 2024. They came up through their youth system. El Mourabat was born in France, and he started one of the 2 games in March 2026. That's when he first came on to Morocco's, or to our radar, or, called up, his first call up. He started one of the 2 remaining games and subbed in for the other. So he also looking quite positive there, Samir El Mourabat. And then finally, we have our possible but unlikely candidates, Usama El Azouzi. Was part of the African Cup squad in 2023, his only tournament, and just on the bench there. Injuries may have played a role in his non-selection for the African Cup here. He had been a possible candidate actually coming into that cup, but was not selected for the preliminary squad, an ankle injury perhaps playing a role. And he was injured for the March 2026 games and actually is still injured. El Azouzi out with a hamstring injury since early February and an unknown return date. So that hamstring injury following upon an ankle injury, and I think that wasn't the only one he has. So poor El Azouzi. injury probably playing a role there. Next, we have Amir Richardson, also possible but unlikely. He was part of the African Cup 2023 squad as well. But for the recent African Cup, he had been an unlikely candidate coming in. Was selected for the preliminary squad there, but not selected for the March 2026 game. So Amir Richardson, possible but unlikely. Those are the defensive midfielders. But honestly, in the central midfield, the main players are coming up in this section. And we have two definite candidates here. Neil El Anui is the first one. Neil El Anui and Azadine Unahi. Azadine Unahi. A bit difficult. Well, I'll just introduce the next player and then say it. Ismail Sabari. For Unahi and Sabari, it's a bit difficult to distinguish them as central or attacking midfielders. They kind of play both roles there. Sabari, especially over the recent period. Anyway, Ismail Sabari is at the likely level. And then we go all the way down to possible but unlikely, where we have several candidates. The first, Benjamin Bouchouari. And then we have Yassine Kechta and Youssef Maleh. All three of those possible but unlikely. And then seemingly off the squad, Salim Amala. So let's go back to the top and look at the definite candidates. Neil El Anui, brand new to Morocco. Well, not brand new, since 2025 though, but he's already amassed 15 caps and 2 goals and is 24 years old. El Anui plays for Roma in Italy since 2025 and in France, where he was born, for a few clubs before that, Lens and Nancy. Actually came up through Nancy's youth club there. He was with that youth club for more than 10 years. On the preliminary squad for the 2023 African Cup, but not selected. But a starter in the 2025 African Cup, El Anui. He had been a likely candidate coming into that cup and was selected for the final squad, as well as for both of the March 2025 games. He started both of those games. So Neil El Anui looking like a definite candidate here. Next, we have Azadine Unahi with Morocco since 2022. And 47 caps and 9 goals. He's just 26 years old. Plays for Girona in Spain since 2025. Marseille in France for a couple of years before that. He was born in Morocco, though, and his youth teams were in Morocco. Unahi's first tournament was the 2021 African Cup there. And he's been selected for all tournaments since, a starter in all of them, in all of those tournaments. However, in the recent African Cup, after he was injured in training after the group stage there and was out of the cup after that. So he had been a likely candidate coming into that cup and was selected. He recovered from his injury and appeared in both of the March 2026 games as a starter in one and on the bench in the other. And you could almost see him becoming more important to the team in that 2025 African Cup. So they'll definitely be happy to have him back for the World Cup here. And we consider him a definite candidate for that cup. At the likely level, Ismail Sabari, we actually considered moving him to an attacking midfielder. He's really been a versatile attacking midfielder in the Cup and in the March games, but did play a couple of times as a central midfielder and is coded that way. So we'll introduce him here. But you might consider him in, he even played as a forward, a centre forward in one of the March games there. So he is proving pretty versatile in attack. Ismail Sabari with Morocco since 2023. He has 27 caps and 7 goals. He's 25 years old and plays for PSV Eindhoven in the Netherlands since 2020. So quite a while with them. He was also with their youth team just at the end of his youth career there. Actually, he It's not really from the Netherlands. He was born in Spain and moved to Belgium at 7 years of age. So his youth clubs were Spanish and Belgium, including Anderlecht there. And I should say Genk was probably his main youth club there before PSV Eindhoven. Ismail Saibari was part of the 2023 African Cup. Just a substitute in that cup, except he did start game 3. He started all 7 games in the 2025 African Cup here, and lined up as a left attacking midfielder for the most part there. But as I said at the beginning, there was one game where he was kind of a central midfielder and he's coded as a central midfielder. So we might consider moving him if he continues to play as an attacker. In the World Cup here, he scored 3 of their 2022 goals. And yes, sorry, my information is a bit mixed up there. He had been a definite candidate, Saibari, coming into the 2025 African Cup. He was selected and he did start. He also started at least the first of their March 2026 games. However, he was not selected for the second match, so a bit worrying there. But we have Ismail Saibari as a likely candidate here. That last game makes us wonder if something's going on there. Okay, let's take a quick look at our 3 possible but unlikely candidates. Benjamin Buchuari has no caps for the national team, but was named to the preliminary squad for the 2025 African Cup, not called up in March 2026. Yassine Ketchta, also no tournament experience and no caps for him. But was named to the preliminary squad. Both of those players had seemed to be off the squad going into the last cup, but because they were selected for the preliminary squad, we have them now as possible but unlikely. Same is true, in fact, of Yusuf Mala, who at least does have a cap for Morocco in 2023. He also made the 2023 African Cup preliminary squad, but here too, not selected for the March 2026 games. Just being on the preliminary squad, their only kind of claim to being considered for this cup. But we think they're possible but unlikely. Finally, we have Salim Amala with Morocco. From 2019 to 2024, that was his last game. Actually, was part of the 2021 and 2023 African Cups, as well as being a starter in the World Cup in 2022, but not selected for the 2025 African Cup. In fact, he had not been called up since the 2023 African Cup, which was in January of 2024, but was selected for the preliminary squad for the 2025 African Cup. So that is, but we do not think that really gives him much of a chance here. So Salim Amala, we have seemingly off the squad. Okay, that is it. We are moving upfield to the attacking midfielders. Generally, we don't categorize players as left and right midfielders anymore, but we do have one who's coded as a right midfielder, and so we'll deal with him here. He's at the possible level. It's Mohamed Chibi. Mohamed Chibi with Morocco since 2021 with 9 caps and 1 goal. He's 32 years old, 33 years old now, I think, and with Pyramids in Egypt since 2022. Played for several teams in Morocco before that. Mohamed Chibi, named to the 2021 African Cup, but not the 2022 World Cup. But he was actually a starter, at least at the beginning of the 2023 African Cup, and was also named to the 2025 edition. He had been a possible candidate coming in to that cup and was selected. However, he was not selected for the March 2026 game. So we have Mohamed Chibi as a possible candidate here. Right, let's move on upfield to the attacking midfielders. And I'll just tell you how we organize this. We kind of created our own category of left attackers and right attackers. And left attackers would be attacking wingers in a 4-4-2 formation, attacking midfielders in a 4-2-3-1, or even attacking, or even forwards, right and left forwards in a 4-3-3 formation. The reason we do that is because we found it's often the same player or the same group of players, regardless of the formation. There. So we are starting then with left attackers, and let's populate the list here. We have a definite candidate in Abdi Ezalzouli. And sorry, I lost my spot there in the graphics. Next, we have likely candidate Elias Ben Sagir, and possible candidate Amin Adli. And then three candidates who are possible but unlikely. So Sofiane Diop is the first. Osame Sarawi. I don't think they should be allowed to have four vowels in a row in their name. Just my personal opinion there as an English teacher. And finally, we have Tarak Tissoudali at the possible but unlikely level. Okay, let's go back and look at these players in a bit more detail, beginning with definite candidate Abdi Ezalzouli. He's been with Morocco since 2022, 35 caps and 2 goals, and he is 24 years old. He is with Real Betis in Spain since 2023 now. He was with Barcelona prior to that, and Barcelona's B team. However, he was with Spanish youth clubs, quite a few of them actually. Even though he was born in Morocco, he moved to Spain and was with youth clubs from 7 years old. In fact, Spain and Morocco were kind of vying for his services. Morocco won out there. His first tournament as Al-Zuli was the World Cup in 2022. He was subbed in 2 games there. Also subbed into the 2025 African Cup for games 1 and 2, but did gain a starting position after that. And had been a definite candidate coming into that cup, and was selected for the final squad. He also appeared in both of their March 2026 games, starting one and a substitute in the other. So Abdi Ezalzouli, a definite candidate here. At the likely level, we have Elias Ben Sagir. He's been with Morocco since just 2024. He's 21 years old, but he already has 20 caps and 3 goals for them. Ben Sagir plays for Bayer Leverkusen in Germany since 2024 and was with Monaco in France, or in the French league, I should say. Before that, he was with Monaco's youth club as well. He was born in France, Ben Sagir, and played for their underage teams. His first tournament was the 2025 African Cup. He subbed into 4 of the games there, not a starter, but he had been a definite candidate coming into the Cup and was selected. He picked up an injury, an ankle injury in the last match there, and was still recovering from that by the time of the March 2026 games. He is recovered from that injury now, but we give him a likely, move him down from definite to likely for this tournament, Ben Sagir. Next, we have possible candidate Amin Adli, with Morocco since 2023 with 17 caps and 1 goal. He's 26 years old and plays for Bournemouth in England since 2025. But like Ben Sagir, played for Bayer Leverkusen in Germany from 2021 to 2025, so basically replaced by Ben Sagir there. He was born in France, Amin Adli, and played for Toulouse's youth club, and that was his first senior team as well. Amin Adli was part of the 2023 African Cup, just as a substitute there, but not selected for the 2025 African Cup. He had been a possible candidate coming into that, but he was not selected. Just on the preliminary squad there. After missing the tournament, he came back after a 5-month absence to appear in both of the March 2026 games. He was a substitute in one and on the bench for the other. So Amin Adli, a possible candidate here. Next, we have the first of our 3 possible but unlikely candidates, Sofiane Diop. He was selected for the preliminary squad for the 2025 African Cup, but didn't make the final cut, nor was he called up in March of 2025. Next, we have Osame Sarawi. Born in Norway is he, and had been a possible candidate coming into the 2025 African Cup, but not named to the preliminary squad there, and injured for the March 2026 games. He is expected to recover from that injury in mid-April of 2026, but it's just a possible but unlikely candidate here. And finally, we have Tarek Tissoudali, who has been involved in tournaments, the 2021, 2023 African Cup. He was on the roster, injured for the 2022 World Cup. He played in the FIFA Arab Cup in December of 2025, but just on the preliminary squad for the 2025 African Cup and not called up in March of 2026. So all of those 3 players, possible candidates, but not likely there. And we'll get more biographical information on them if they end up being selected for them and all players that we don't really focus on much here. Let's go to right attackers, and we have at the definite level Brahim Diaz. And then at the likely level, Chemseddine Talbi. At the possible level, we have a couple of candidates here. Gessim Yassin, who's a newcomer, Gessim Yassin, and then Elias Akomat. And then going down to the possible but unlikely level, Zakaria Abuklal, and seemingly off the squad, Hakim Ziyech. Up we go to Brahim Diaz, kind of hero and villain of the 2025 African Cup. I'll get into that I'll get into that after introducing him here. Brahim Diaz, with Morocco since 2024, 24 caps and an impressive 13 goals. He's 26 years old. He did play 1 game for Spain and scored a goal in it too in 2021, I believe that was. And I have him on the Spanish team from 2021 to 2022, but just 1 cap. So anyway, Brahim Diaz plays for Real Madrid in Spain since 2019. He was loaned out to AC Milan and also played or was on the roster for Manchester City in England, actually, with their youth club as well. Brahim Diaz. His first tournament was the 2025 African Cup here, where he was a starter in the Cup. Really impressive, especially in the group stage. But you know, in the final, they were looking to win the final on a last second almost penalty deep into extra time, and he tried a Panenka, and the goalie just stood up straight and caught it. And they ended up losing the game, even though they were later awarded the title. So he was inconsolate, really, after that, even though he won the Golden Boot Award in the tournament. I think he was in tears when he received it. Obviously had been a definite candidate then coming into the African Cup and was a starter in it. And he also appeared in both of the March 2026 game, starting one and subbing into the other. So Brahim Diaz, a definite candidate, a huge name for them in this tournament. Next, we have likely candidate Chemseddine Talbi. And he's been with Morocco since 2025 with 5 caps, 21 years old. He plays for Sunderland in England since 2025 and was with clubs in Belgium before that. He was born in Belgium, Talby, and was selected for the African Cup there. Just a substitute, he only came into one of the games there. He had been a possible candidate coming into the 2025 African Cup there, but was selected for the final squad. He also appeared in both of the March 2026 games, just like Brahim Diaz, a starter in one and a sub in the other. So now we have him as a as a likely candidate coming into this tournament. Next, we have newcomer Gessim Yassin, brand new to the squad since 2026, born in France and plays for Strasbourg in France, actually recently moved from Dunkirk to Strasbourg in 2026, and he got his first caps in March of 2026 for Morocco, just like the other two, starting one and subbing into one. Gessim Yassin. So we have him as a possible candidate just because he is so new to the squad. There also possible is Ilyas Akomach with Morocco since 2024 with 13 caps and no goals. He's 22 years old, with Villarreal in Spain since 2023, and also with Barcelona's B team in Spain there, came up through their youth club too. He was born in Spain. He did play for a couple of youth clubs before Barcelona, but moved from Barcelona's youth club to their B team and almost to their A team there. Ilyas Akomach was part of the, he was named to the roster, a new candidate for Morocco, named to the roster for the 2023 African Cup. He didn't make that one, but he did make the 2025 edition and subbed into 3 of the games there. We had considered him a likely candidate going into that African Cup, and he was selected. However, Akomach did not appear under the new manager in the March 2026 game, so we now have him as a possible candidate. The possible but unlikely candidate, Zakaria Abouklal, with Morocco since 2020 and has 22 caps and 3 goals. He's 26 years old, playing for Torino in Italy since 2025 and Toulouse in France before that, but actually was born in Belgium and up until moving to Toulouse in France, he played for Belgian teams there. He came up through the PSV Eindhoven youth club system there. And he was a starter, actually, in the 2023 African Cup. He lost his starting position. And in the World Cup that followed was a substitute, although he did come into 4 of the games as a sub. However, he was not part of either of the 2 African Cups since. And I realize I'm giving too much detail on a possible but unlikely candidate, but I might as well finish. It was due to injury in the first cup, and then basically drifted off the team, having last appeared in November 2024. He did make the preliminary squad, though. That's why we have him as possible but unlikely, but was not called up to the March 2026 games. And we'll finish with Hakim Ziyech. Even though he's seemingly off the squad, I will go into a bit of detail on him since he's a veteran for the squad with 65 caps and 25 goals. He has been with Morocco since 2015. He's 33 years old now. Back playing in Morocco. Well, I shouldn't say back because he never did play in Morocco. He was born in the Netherlands and came up through Heerenveen in the Netherlands, their youth club and his first club. Some of the big teams in Netherlands, Twente and Ajax, before moving to Chelsea in England. And since then, he was kind of sliding downhill in terms of club affiliations. Galatasaray, then Al Duhai, in Qatar, and now with Wydad Casablanca in Morocco. And yes, he actually has been part of the 2 World Cups that Morocco's been involved in, and also the 2023 African Cup, but off the team by the time of the 2025 Cup here, actually a seemingly off the squad player, last appearing for Morocco in September of 2025, and he was on the preliminary squad for the African Cup, but really has been off the squad for quite a while now, and doesn't look like he's going to come back. Not selected for the March 2026 game. So Hakim Ziyech, once a big name, but now doesn't even look like a candidate for this cup. All right, that's right attackers. Let's move on to the central attackers. And we begin with Bilal Al-Khanous. He is a definite candidate. After that, we go down to the possible level with Ryan Bounida. And just one more candidate at the possible but unlikely level, Amin Harit. Let's go back and take a look at Bilal Al-Khanous with Morocco since 2022, but 35 caps and 3 goals in that time. He's still only 22 years old. He's on the roster for Leicester in England since 2024, but in fact has been loaned to Stuttgart in Germany since 2025. Al-Khanous was born in Belgium and came up through the Genk youth system. That was his last youth club, but actually spent 10 years with Anderlecht's youth club prior to that. Al-Khanous was selected for the World Cup in 2022, just a substitute in that tournament, and really a substitute in the 2 African Cups since then as well. However, he was a definite candidate coming into the 2025 African Cup and was selected. He also appeared in both of the March 2026 games, actually starting one of those and as a substitute in the other. So Bilal Al-Khanous, a definite candidate, not necessarily a starter though. And next we have possible candidate Ryan Bounida. He has no caps for Morocco. He's just 21 years old. Belgium born, but playing for Ajax in the Netherlands since 2025, and actually came through their youth system, well, kind of like Al-Khanous was with Anderlecht, Anderlecht's youth club prior to Ajax's youth club. Let's move on to a possible candidate, Ryan Bounida. His name is in orange. Again, that means he is new or very recent on our radar. And actually, like Al-Khanous there, he was born in Belgium and played for Anderlecht's youth club, and then moved to Ajax youth club. He's been with them. He's been with them ever since, Ajax in the Netherlands. And Bounida got his first appearance on the bench in March of 2026. He came in actually for the second game, so he didn't start the second game, but was on the bench for it. So Ryan Bounida, a possible candidate. He, by the way, is just 20 years old. And finally, we have seemingly, possible but unlikely, Amin Harit. And he's more experienced with Morocco, plays for Marseille in France, but on loan to a Turkish team. But I won't go into too much detail. He had been seemingly off the squad coming into the 2025 African Cup, but was selected for the preliminary squad there, not selected for the March 2026 game. So an outside chance, we think, possible but unlikely candidate. And that's it for the attacking midfield. We move on up to the forward line. We have no players coded as secondary strikers, so we go directly to kind of centre forwards. And here we have Ayoub El Kabi, a bit of a hero in the 2025 African Cup there. He's a definite candidate here. We have Hamza Igamain also as a definite candidate, but an injury concern. We'll talk about that. Next, we have Youssef N. Nesri as a likely candidate. and also likely is Soufiane Rahimi. And then we go down to possible candidate Yassir Zabiri. That's all we have here. So let's look at those 5 candidates, beginning with Ayoub El Kabi, with Morocco since 2018, with 68 caps and 32 goals, and he's 32 years old. Plays for Olympiacos in Greece since 2023, and let's go to his tournament career. Part of the squad for the World Cup in 2018. Started game 1 there, but lost his starting position, and has really been a substitute. I'm tempted to say ever since, but I'm not dead sure. But not a starter in any of the cups after that. He missed actually the 2019 African Cup and the 2022 World Cup. Not selected for those, but selected for the 3 African Cups in 2021, 2023, and 2025. Started as a sub in both of them, or in all 3 of them. But in 2025, he scored a spectacular goal in game 1, a sensational bicycle kick, and then scored another bicycle kick later on. The long and short of it is he gained a starting position over Soufiane Rahimi, who had started game 1 there, and we'll come to Rahimi soon. But there we go. Even though he is more of a sub than a starter, he had been a definite candidate coming into the African Cup, and was selected, of course. He also appeared in both of the March 2026 games as a substitute and on the bench. So really, perhaps back to his role more as a substitute there. Also at the definite level is Hamza Igamane, and he's been with Morocco since 2025, but has 10 caps and 2 goals already, and is 24 years old. He was he was selected for the final squad, by the way. He had come in as a likely candidate there, and was selected, but was not on the bench for the group stage of the game. He, like Hakimi, came into the tournament with an injury, but he did sub into some of the final stage games there. He was injured, though, for the March 2026 games, out with a cruciate ligament tear since late January, and an unknown return date. I forgot to give his club information. He was with Lille in France since 2025 and Rangers in Scotland prior to that, and teams in Morocco before moving to Scotland in 2024. I'm not sure why I have moved him up to a definite candidate here. I got to confess, I think it's a mistake. He was a likely candidate coming in to the previous African Cup, and I think I'm going to put him as a likely candidate in this, the injury aside, which may make him unavailable altogether. So let's move him down to the likely list and then move on to our other 2 players at the likely level. Youssef En-Nesyri has been with Morocco since 2016 with 92 caps and 25 goals, and he's 29 years old. Recently moved from Fenerbahce in Turkey to Al Ittihad in Saudi Arabia, and I wonder if that has changed his standing in the eyes of the manager there. You'll see why shortly here. Prior to Fenerbahce, he was with Sevilla in Spain from 2020 to 2024, and but despite being with Malaga Youth Club in Spain, he was born in Morocco. And En-Nesyri has been part of tournaments since the 2017 African Cup, mostly as a substitute. He was a starter in 2019 and in the 2022 World Cup there, where he scored 2 goals, and a starter in the 2023 African Cup, but just a sub in 2025. So it is kind of coming towards the end of his career, at least not as much a starter as he used to be. And he had been a definite candidate coming into the African Cup, but we kind of knew that he wasn't a starter at that point, and he wasn't selected for the 2026 games in March of 2026. And again, we wonder if that kind of move down in his club affiliation is part of the reason for that. So we have En-Nesyri as a likely candidate here, but I wonder if the manager, if the new manager is lowering his value because of that club change. Next, we have Soufiane Rahimi, also at the likely level with 35 caps and 11 goals for Morocco since 2021. He is 30 years old and plays for Al Ain in UAE. He's been with them for quite a while, actually, since 2021, after moving from Raja Casablanca, which was his youth club and the only club he was with apart from a short loan out there. 2021 African Cup was Rahimi's first tournament, but actually not selected for the two tournaments after that, including the 2022 World Cup, but did return for the 2025 African Cup. As I said, he was a starter in that tournament, but then lost his starting position to El Kabi there, and had only been a possible candidate coming into that African Cup. So a bit of a surprise that he was a starter. And no, not a bit of a surprise. It was a surprise. He appeared in both of the March 2026 games, though. He started one and was a sub in the other. So Soufiane Rahimi, probably at this point, the most likely of our three likely candidates, if Igamane's... No, yeah, I'll just leave it at that. I'm getting a bit tongue-tied there. Finally, we have possible candidate Yassir Sabiri, new to the squad. He's 21 years old with no caps. He recently moved to Reims in France in 2026, having been with Famalicão in Portugal for 2 years before that. So Sabiri first appeared on the bench in March 2026. Just for the second game, actually. He didn't start that game, but was on the bench for it. So hard to know where to place candidates who come in right at the end like that, how possible they are in the manager's mind. But there we have it. And that's it. That is our look at Morocco's squad. Let's move on to section 3. Actually, that begins with a quick review of what we've just done in section 2, but we're doing that partly because we're making a short version of this media cast featuring the review of candidates. After that, we do have a little bit of business, especially looking at injuries. But let's go back to the top of the list and run through it once more. We have a manager change from Morocco. So the manager who led them through the very recent African Cup in December 2025 and January of this year is out. He actually resigned from the job. The final there was a bit of a mess where they lost the game in high drama and were later awarded the game. Anyway, maybe that was all too much for Walid Regragui, and he had a few reasons for quitting. I mean, first of all, he thought he had lost the tournament, and he was replaced by Mohamed Ouabi. Mohamed Ouabi, basically with the youth teams, Morocco national youth team, so familiar with the national team. But a quite inexperienced manager there. So we're only putting him at the likely level here because we wouldn't be surprised if they called Regragui back or brought in a more experienced international manager than Ouabi. So interesting there. Let's move on to goalkeepers. We have two definite candidates, Yassine Bounou and Munir Mohand or Munir Mohammadi. Both of those at the definite level, but none at the likely level. Two at the possible level, though, El Mehdi Al Harar and Mehdi Benabid, basically fighting it out for the third string keeper position, we think. There are candidates at the possible but unlikely level. and seemingly off the squad level, but we're going to skip those in this race through the race through the squad and move on to defenders. So for central defenders, we have so many names because there's a bit of a problem there. We have definite candidate Nayef Aguerd, but you'll see shortly that he's injured. The other starter in the 2025 African Cup was Romain Saiss, and he is retired. We have a likely candidate in newcomer Issa Diop, and then 7 possible candidates. The first 2, Jawad Al Yamik and Adam Messina, both took turns replacing. Ultimately Messina got the job, but were both replacements after Romain Saiss got injured in the African Cup. But they're just the first 2 at our possible level. We have 5 more: Abdel Abkar, Alhamid Eight Boudlal, Chadi Riyad, and then 2 newcomers, Redouane Halal and Ismail Baouf. Wow, all of those. So March games will be, the pre-tournament games will be important in helping us determine what they go with there. Let's go to the left back position, and here we actually have Noussair Mazraoui, who's a right back by trade, kind of coming into this position. He's a definite candidate. We also have likely candidate Anas Salaheddine, and 2 possible candidates as well, Youssef Bellamari and Soufiane El Karouani. Over on the right side, we have a definite candidate in Ashraf Hakim. No candidates at the likely level, but 2 possible candidates, Zakaria El Ouadi and Omar El Hilali. If you're looking at the YouTube version of this, you'll see their name is in light grey, which means they have no tournament experience. Up to defensive midfielders, none at the definite level, but 2 at the likely level, Oussama Targaline. Just 1 at the likely level, Oussama Targaline. 3 at the possible level, Sofiane Amrabat, Mohamed Rabi Hrimat, and Samir Al Murabet. Their names in orange because they're new during this period, so basically came in after the African Cup there. The main players, though, are the central midfielders, or players coded as central midfielders. 2 definite candidates in Neil El Anawi and Azadine Unahi. And then a likely candidate at Ismail Saibari, although he's more of an attacking midfielder in truth. Upfield we go. We do have 1 player coded as a right midfielder, Mohamed Chibi at the possible level. And up to the attacking end of the midfield, we begin with left attackers and have a definite candidate in Abdi Ezal Zuli, and then likely candidate Elias Ben Sagir, and possible candidate Amin Adli. For the right attack, we have definite candidate Brahim Diaz, and then likely candidate Chemseddine Talbi, and 2 possible candidates, newcomer Gassim Yassin and Ilyas Akomach. Central attacking midfielders, a definite candidate in Bilal El Khanous and a possible candidate in Ryan Bounida. But don't forget Seybara, also kind of a versatile attacking midfielder as well. Up we go to the forwards and centre forwards. We have a definite candidate with Ayub El Kabi, and then 3 likely candidates, Hamza Igamane, Youssef En-Nesri, and Soufiane Rahimi, and then a possible candidate with newcomer Yassir Sabiri. All right, that is our motorcycle ride through the squad, and let's take a look at some big names off the squad. Well, actually, even though it's just been a couple of months since the 2025 African Cup, we have 2 big absences. The first one is manager Walid Regragui, and the other is Romain Saiss, the central defender there, who announced his retirement from international football in February 2026. Let's go to injuries. We have quite a few to deal with here. We're kind of going to go in order of their likelihood of reaching the squad. So we have three definite candidates with injury concerns. The first is central defender Nayef Aguerd. He is out with a groin injury and an unknown return date, so we have to put him in the unknown category. Next, we have forward Hamza Igamane, and he is out with a cruciate ligament tear since late January and an unknown return date, so he too hopefully we'll get more information when we get to part two. Finally, we have goalkeeper, backup goalkeeper really, Munir Mohammed. He is a definite candidate though. He's out with a shoulder injury from mid-February 2026, but he is expected back in May of 2026, so we'll put him on the expected back list there. Next, we have one possible candidate, Adam Messina. He kind of took over from Romain Saiss in central defence there in the African Cup, but now he is out with a bruised hip from late January 2026 and an unknown return date there. And then two candidates who are possible but unlikely. Usama El Azouzi, out with a hamstring injury since early February and an unknown return date there, so also on the unknown list. And finally, Osame Tharawi, out with a groin injury from late January, but expected back in mid-April there. So we put him in the expected back. Again, just a possible but unlikely candidate there. Okay, well, we will come back to this in part two, of course, and hopefully have a bit more information. Closing thoughts for Morocco. Well, they were disappointed not to win the final game of the African Cup in Morocco. It's why the main reason the manager quit the job. They were awarded the cup. I'm not sure how they feel about that, but really a very talented squad, some really big names on the squad, and hoping to kind of reproduce what they did in 2022, their really successful run there. All right, that's as much as I can think of to say. Let's move on to previewing part two. We're going to release that when the final squad is selected. Perhaps we'll get a preliminary squad there. We'll tell you who is on each of those, and we'll focus on any surprises there, so any notable non-selections or any unexpected inclusions, and that could include new players. We saw some of them in March, in the March 2026 games there. We'll really need to do an update on injuries. They have some concerning injuries there. And one of the things we do in part two, which we didn't do in part one here, is think about who the starters are going to be. So that'll be a bit of fun in part two. Otherwise, we have finished our part one look at Morocco. We would like to thank Michael Foster and Pixabay for the wonderful music in this mediacast. The title of the piece used is Look to the Sky, Tribal Dance Beats Native American.